Right, good evening members and members of the public and all the press attending this full council meeting of BCP Council. It's 11th of July 2023. Welcome to everybody. I'm Councillor Leslie Dedman, and as Chairman of BCP Council, I will be chairing the meeting and supported by the Vice Chairman, Councillor Simon Bull. I'm going to set out the housekeeping arrangements for this meeting. As you know, the meeting is being recorded by the Council for live and subsequent broadcast, and it's going to be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everybody follow these ground rules. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand clearly to indicate. Where there appears to be consensus in the meeting for a motion, I will ask if there's any dissension. When a formal vote is required, this is carried out by a show of hands, unless a recorded vote is requested, and that requires support from a quarter of the members present at the meeting. On a slightly less, on another note, please could members indicate to me if they're leaving the meeting. It's a bit hands up, can I go, sir? But don't worry too much. In accordance with the Constitution, we will have a comfort break if we go on for more than 2 hours. And the last one on that particular piece of housekeeping is that points of order, if anybody wishes to raise a point of order, should state the applicable Constitution provision. They have numbers, and we'd like you to tell us the number, not just point of order. Right, so we now go on to our agenda. Item 1, apologies. Chief Executive, will you read out the apologies received for the meeting?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Allen, Councillor Bagwell, Councillor Butt, Councillor Haynes and Councillor Northover.
Right, thank you very much. We have Councillor Rice.
Yes, can I pass on apologies for Councillor Pete Miles?
Thank you. No, oh. Councillor Phipps?
Yes, could I also pass on apologies for Councillor Ricketts, please?
Thank you. I think we've got all those. Any others? No? Thank you. Oh, agenda item 2 is result of the by-election, and it's a great pleasure to welcome Councillor Sarah Armstrong, who was elected councillor for the East Cliff and Springbourne ward at the by-election on the 29th. Welcome and congratulations. Agenda item 3. Chief Executive, can you report on any declarations of interest received? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. No specific declarations have been received, but if any member does consider they wish to make any declaration of interest, please refer to the flow chart that's set out in the agenda for guidance.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, do you agree to confirm the minutes of the Council meeting held on the 21st of March 2023 and the annual meeting held on the 23rd of May 2023? And there's a supplement which has been circulated containing revised minutes of the 21st of March 2023 meeting. Members, is there any dissension from confirming the minutes? Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you, Chair. Could we have an explanation from an officer, perhaps, for why the meetings are revised, please? The minutes.
I'm sorry, Councillor Farquhar, I didn't catch the last piece of that. Why the minutes were...
If I may, Chair, if we look at our packs here, the meeting minutes for the 21st of March 2023 is marked revised.
Yes.
To be more specific, could we have an explanation to why they're revised, when they were revised, when the original meeting minutes were actually published? I think it is in the public interest to understand why that's come about.
Right, thank you. I'm going to pass that to the officer.
Thank you, members. Following a representation from a member of the public who is actually going to ask a question this evening, and a response will be provided, there were omissions that were identified in those minutes. We reviewed the content of those minutes and the recording, and it was determined that the omission should be added. So we rectified that. I believe the minutes were republished on Thursday last week. As I said, there is a question this evening by a member of the public, and a response will be provided.
Thank you. Councillor Farquhar, you're still standing.
Sorry, Chair, I just raised to ask a follow-up question before we vote on accepting them or not. Are they marked in any way what the omissions were in the actual minutes themselves?
Sorry, Chairman, no, they're not, but they are in relation to the public questions and a subsequent minute further down the line. I can provide Councillor Farquhar with the changes and the comparison.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any more comment on this? So is there going to be any dissension from confirming the accuracy of the minutes? Right. I think we can agree that by consensus. Thank you very much, members. And thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Agenda item 5, announcements from the chairman. Right. I'm going to mention all of the events I've been to, which started more or less in May, just after the council. So initially, I went up to an all-party parliamentary dog advisory committee, which sounds a bit odd. It was a presentation from a team in Poole who had the great honour of presenting to this parliamentary committee about dangerous dogs and dangerous owners. It was very, very interesting. There were also some very nice dogs up there. I went to Diverse Abilities Open Day, where there was a royal visit. The Duke of Kent visited to see the wonderful work of this charity, which I'm sure many of you know and have visited. There was a concert in the Priory for Honeypot Children's Charity. There were some wonderful pieces of music and an absolutely massive choir. And it would have been beautiful in any setting, but the acoustics and the setting of the Priory made it absolutely breathtaking. And then after that, I went to open the Independent Funeral Homes International Conference, which was slightly different. And this conference was held in Christchurch. It was held by a local firm, but it had funeral directors from all over the world, and apparently we lead in the way our funerals are run, which is rather cheerful in its own way. Then, of course, there was Armed Forces Day, which I know many of you attended. That was very, very moving. And as well as it being very moving, it showed the wonderful men in our army, because when I put the flag up, I didn't secure it quite as I should have done, and it started to droop. And an army man came and immediately put it right. So this is why we depend on our wonderful army. After that, there was the Christchurch Civic Service for blessing of the Christchurch Town Council, which I was very honoured to go to. On another evening, I went to the Bournemouth Hebrew congregation for the launch of Dreams of a Nation. That was an absolutely superb mix of music, pictures and words, and it presented the history from way back in time, right back in the, what we would call, or I certainly would call the Old Testament times, to the founding of the State of Israel in 1948. And as well as being really entertaining, really moving, it was really educational. I learnt so much. Then Arts University Summer Show, that was absolutely fantastic. We have a lot of very talented students. I really hope a lot of them stay in our area.
Please excuse me, Madam Chair. I'm just wanting to double check whether we've lost our live feed, because we've all lost our internet connection, and I didn't want you to be wasting your breath if we were no longer transmitting.
No idea.
If you still got, none of us have got any internet. so sorry, you were in full flow.
No, it's all right.
There are some issues with the live stream, but I am doing a backup recording and I will upload it as soon as possible after the meeting.
Oh.
I don't think the Wi-Fi is down for everybody though, because it is working.
Oh, the next one was actually going to be Crown Court Open Day. I won't say too much about that. The Open Day was so well attended that they were rather worried by the amount of people that went in to see the Crown Court. And I must say it was a very interesting day. We heard from one of the judges. It was nice to be on the right side of the bench, but I won't go into that. Then it was the LGA conference. Welcome to BCP. I don't know if anybody heard what I said because it was very... I had to speak to 2 rooms at once without actually seeing anybody. But that was a great conference, and I know that a lot of people went, and it was very, very well done. And I then went down to Poole for the Pip Hare's launch of her new boat. She's going to go single-handed round the world in the Vendée Globe round the world race in a 60-foot boat. Now, that sounds quite big. If you don't know what feet are, I'm not going to translate it because I don't know it either. But I can just say what a woman, and she's in Poole, so please go down and, see everything. And today, many of you were in the chamber today in memory of the genocide of Srebrenica, and there was a lovely little service just here in the chamber, various representatives present to honour all of those affected by those terrible times. And the one thing that I didn't manage to attend, and the Vice-Chairman very kindly attended for me, with I think the Mayor as well, was the Shared Lives Week tea party. And I wish I'd been able to do that, but I'm sure it was very worthwhile. Right, so that is my own announcements. I now invite the leader of the council to say a few words about Lord Kerslake, who, as we all know, has sadly passed away, and then to introduce an urgent item of business which I have agreed to be considered at this meeting. So, Leader, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair. Some of you will be aware, especially if you were at the LGA conference last week, that tributes have been paid from across the local government family, officers and members as well, to Lord Bob Kerslake, who had been the head of the civil service and had really given his whole life to local government and the civil service. We were very privileged when a non-executive director chair was needed for Future Places a year or so ago, that he came forward as the preferred candidate, and I was lucky enough to be part of the appointment process to bring him on board. In the time that he worked with us here at BCP, he really did provide such a wise counsel for how that organisation needs to develop, but he also had a wicked sense of humour and seemed to be comfortable in absolutely everybody's company. It's ironic that when he told us that he was unwell and that it was not curable, he was absolutely determined to see through his commitment to us to create something really special from Future Places. And sadly, it was only 2 days before he died that Graham and I spoke and arranged a meeting to go up to London to meet with him and say, do you know what, Bob, you've done your bit, it's time to hand it over, we'll carry on from here and go and spend the last few weeks with your family. And sadly, he never got the opportunity to do that. So we never got the chance to say thank you to him properly. But I am really thrilled with everybody who paid tribute to him at the LGA conference last week. I know several people in the room were there at that point. So because of that, we did ask him to conduct a review of the scope, the people and the governance of Future Places so that we could take it forward into its next iteration, which wasn't completed. It's a really important piece of work that we can use so that we can be confident of what that company needs to do for us and for the place. We have therefore introduced a very last-minute paper in asking for the approval of the appointment of an interim chair of the board, and that is somebody who's already a chair, already a director of the board, and my internet has not come back, so I'm unable to see the paper. But I will just tell you that Karima Farmi, who is already on the board, has agreed to take up the interim role as chair to allow us to complete the work of that governance review and to steady the ship whilst a new chair is found. A recruitment process will be carrying on over the summer, so this is very much an interim appointment. Karima is a local woman. She has connections with a lot of local organisations. She's on the board of the Bournemouth University. She's also on the board of one of our local academy chain that has some local schools, as well as having connections with the University of Cambridge, Latimer, which is the an arm of Clarion Housing Association, and she is also directly involved with Great Ormond Street Hospital. So she comes with a fantastic breadth of experience in property development, investment and governance. So I'm very happy to recommend her as the interim chair, and that was done off the cuff because I couldn't read the paper. So I'm not quite sure what the recommendation is, but I so put it. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got as the agenda item certainly appointment of the interim independent chair of BCP Future Places Limited. Leader, you've proposed that. Do you have a seconder? Yes.
Happy to second.
I think that was Councillor Earl. Thank you. Right. Do any councillors wish to speak? Not only on Lord Kerslake's death, which I'm sure we're all very, very sad about, but also on the urgent piece of business, which is the interim chair. Do I have anybody raising their hand? Who is that? Who? Oh, hello. Councillor Aikenhead. Yeah. Have you got your microphone on, Councillor? Well done, thank you.
It's okay, just working out how to use my microphone. First of all, I would just like to say that we did feel that this urgent piece of business was sprung on us rather quickly before the meeting, and would like to ask maybe that in future we could be given more notice. I understand that it's urgent, but it is important that we do the council's business with proper consideration. I would also like to say that I really respect all of the things that have been said about the individuals that are involved with this item of business, the former chair and the new person who's been appointed, because none of us in the Labour group have any problem with those people as individuals. But we feel that we cannot support the appointment of someone to a body that we do not agree with its existence. We feel that Future Places has not produced anything and has cost a lot of money. So we feel that this point really does need to be made in council. We don't have the money to fix...
Councillor, can I just remind you that we are debating a chairman of the Future Places Limited rather than debating Future Places. So I would prefer you didn't go into all that at this juncture.
Okay, I just wanted to explain the reason that we are... I will just briefly explain the reason that we are not supporting this, and that is that we feel that the council does not have enough money to continue with Future Places, so therefore we don't feel we can support but we have nothing against the individuals concerned.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cooper? Oh, I'm so sorry, I was looking in the wrong direction. Councillor Cooper.
That's okay. Thank you. I'll sort of agree with most of what Sue said. One thing I would like to say as the ward councillor for Hamworthy is the anger on the doorstep and on the street of what's gone on the developments. It is related to choosing a new leader of that group.
Well, no, can I just correct you there,
yes.
Councillor? We already have future places, and that's for another debate. What we're debating here, if we're debating, is to appoint this new person who is, in fact, as the leader has said, very, very worthy of the position. It's the position that we are going to debate, not the mere fact that we have future places. That's for another forum.
Okay, I mean, I think they are directly related and feel a little bit disempowered in that process.
And I think
However,
also, Councillor, I think once I've said that, I would like you to sit down. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any more comments about the actual fact of having this new chairman? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm probably one of the few people actually that have met the candidate in question, albeit online, not physically. And I can actually vouch for her robustness in dealing with criticisms of future places and any questions that she has to answer. So I would welcome her appointment as chair, and I hope the council would as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I think the leader is going to sum up now. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say I completely understand the positions made by Councillor Aikenhead and Councillor Cooper. I really do. I do think it's not appropriate in the fact that we are, recognising the work of Lord Kerslake and actually recognising the willingness of Karima to take this role on to help us out as an interim measure. It is not a position that she has sought. It is not a position that she's actually been very clear with us. This is not a position she is seeking to take on a permanent basis. But we do have to have a chair of the board in order for us to make decisions about whether we keep or not keep the organisation. And without a chair of the board, they can't actually make their decisions. So this absolutely isn't about continuing something that is or is not working. I equally understand Councillor Cooper's concern, the anger on the doorstep. That's probably why we're sitting over here, because it was one of the things that was coming up. And Lord Kerslake was fully aware of that, which is why he agreed to take on the full review that he's doing. And Karima has been leading the governance review of future places to understand whether it is robust, whether it's doing what it needs to do, and one of the other directors is taking on a review around the projects. Those reports will be made public, and we will then all be able to express our view about the future of future places. So please do be assured that is something that we want everybody to be involved with. But we have to have a chair of the board for now, and I'm absolutely delighted to recommend Karima Farmi to that position on an interim basis. Thank you.
Right, councillors. The agenda item is on the appointment of the interim independent chair of BCP Future Places Limited. I would normally ask for a consensus, but is there any dissent from this motion? Because then we can go for a vote of... Right, okay. Right, we'll go... In that case, can we vote by a show of hands in favour of the motion of the appointment of the interim chair? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. Oops. Oh, sorry, we've already counted you, but you're welcome to try again. Yes. Yes. Are there any abstentions from this? Thank you, Councillor. Right, that was actually carried. Thank you very much. Right, now as we've gone off my paper properly, so we're on agenda item 6, public issues. The time for questions, statements and petitions from members of the public is normally after declarations of interest. It's on the agenda now at this point, and it's restricted to a total of 15 minutes. Although I do have discretion to make it longer if I feel that's right. So when a question to which an answer is to be given is not reached within the time limit, we will then give a written answer to the questioner within 2 working days of the meeting with a copy emailed to all councillors. So that covers everybody's question and it will all be put. And in accordance with the Constitution, no discussion shall be allowed upon questions or statements. So the first public question that I have here is from Sue Chapman, who has submitted a public question regarding climate change. If you'd like to come to the front here, if you ask your question, I think Councillor Hadley will respond. Thank you. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Good evening. Given governance failure to alert and protect us from climate catastrophe, as noted by the UN Chief, Zach Goldsmith, and the Chair of the Climate Change Committee, it falls to BCP Council to enact, with Dunkirk leadership, the speedy decarbonising safeguarding needed for all citizens. BCP's Climate Chief warns of the imminence of global ecological collapse, lack of leadership, and that there will be no guarantee of a future. So when will the BCP public be educated as to the risks to well-being and be incentivised to help avoid the worst impacts of carbon bombing and ecosystem collapse? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hadley, are you prepared to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sue, for your question and for your indefatigable efforts to raise the alarm and to promote awareness and action on the climate change mitigation. BCP Council is in the process of refreshing our corporate strategy and related documents and programmes. As part of this process, the climate strategy and action plan are being enhanced to comprehensively manage our sustainability risks and opportunities. This has identified a number of priority actions across the Council services and the BCP area for the next few years. A series of external workshops is planned in coming months to share these actions, to ask for feedback and to prompt action groups to start working towards their delivery. One of the priority actions is to develop a community sustainability and climate engagement programme using a number of our key sites such as the Hainsbury Head Visitor Centre and the Durley Chine Environmental Innovation Hub to share and teach the science behind the current emergencies and threats and what we can all do in response. This will be done in a way that accurately describes the challenges, using useful and relevant literature, but framed in a way that shows how collective, urgent, positive action can meet these challenges and provide achievable opportunities for a sustainable future that can improve the quality of life for all and support our natural ecosystem. We will work to develop and deliver this programme alongside existing teams, schools, colleges, universities, community groups and businesses. The programme will be offered to councillors first so that they are aware of the material and the science and can support its engagement in the communities that they serve. Thank you.
Right, our next question is from Alex McKinstry. This is a public question regarding the draft council minutes. Mr. McKinstry, would you like to come through?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Council. Could the Leader of the Council explain or investigate why omissions were made from the original draft minutes of the 21st of March full Council meeting? In particular, Councillor Broadhead's reply to the question from Mr. Sofianos regarding the standards regime, which was reduced from 283 words to 83 words. Why were the provocative parts of that response edited out or excluded, including the entire 120-word concluding paragraph in which Councillor Broadhead made some very serious allegations against the public?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKinstry, for your question and for your careful attention to the work of the Council. I don't think there's anybody else who reads quite so many minutes as you do. We really do appreciate the effort that you go to in engaging with the Council, and I would like to reassure anyone else watching the meeting that we do welcome active engagement with all of our Council meetings and are seeking to improve the trust and transparency within the democratic process. What you may not be aware of is that responses to questions are prepared in advance of the meeting, and on this occasion the wording that was provided to the officers was used for the draft minutes. Therefore, the officers were not aware of the additional paragraphs until later. The councillor responding to the question expanded the response, and it is with regret that this was not included in full in the draft minutes. I am advised that upon receipt of your question highlighting this omission, as clarified to Councillor Farquhar just now, and I'll add that back into my response because it wasn't in the written one I already given, that the officers concerned reviewed the minutes immediately and recordings and agreed to publish a revised draft, which is now on the Council's website, and we've all been provided it tonight. I can reassure you there was no political interference with the drafting of the minutes, and that this was a genuine error which the officers have accepted.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Alex. Right, the next question is from Daniel Parking. I'm so sorry, I said that name wrong because the next word is about parking. It's Daniel Parkin, who has submitted a public question regarding the Durley Road car park redevelopment scheme. Daniel, would you like to put your question when you get to the rostrum?
Thank you. Firstly, may I just say congratulations and welcome to all the new councillors that were appointed, and good luck with your 4-year term. So the question relates to the £330,000 of Section 106 monies paid by the Bournemouth Development Company in relation to the Durley Road car park redevelopment. I've heard allegations that these monies were not spent on improvements in the Durley Road area, but were instead allocated to the Council's general fund. Can you please confirm whether this is correct and how these monies have since been spent or utilised? Can you also provide any supporting documentation? This matter was alluded to by the external audit at the 27th of October Audit and Governance meeting, although the Durley Road scheme was not specifically named. The auditor added that he had not investigated the allegation because it had been received outside the statutory inspection period for those accounts, and that £330,000 was, in any case, his words, not material to the overall set of accounts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Cox, you're ready to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Daniel, for your diligence in asking that particular question. The Section 106 monies were actually paid by Durley Road Development LLP, a subsidiary of Bournemouth Development Company LLP, in relation to the Durley Road car park redevelopment, and that totalled £354,000. These included highway works for £330,000 and £24,000 in relation to parking changes in the Durley Road area. To date, approximately £78,000 has been spent on design fees, surveys and traffic regulation orders linked to the requirements of the Section 106 agreement. The remaining £276,000 is committed to be spent in the Durley Road area as per the agreement, but the spending has been delayed due to several factors. Work is expected to start in the coming months. However, I would emphasise to your last part of your question that Section 106 monies are specific in nature and agreed by the Planning Authority and cannot be released and offset against the general fund reserves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we now have Mr. Philip Stanley Watts, a public question on the East Cliff lift. Would you like to come through, Philip, and ask your question?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My question is about beach accessibility for my member of my family is in a wheelchair and also a heritage asset. The East Cliff lift is a part of national seaside heritage which was closed in 2016 owing to rockfall. Could the Cabinet member tell me whether there are plans to reopen it and stabilise the cliffs in BCP area?
Thank you. I think Andy Hadley is going to reply to that. Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your question, Mr Stanley Watts. Since the cliff slip at East Cliff, there have been 3 attempts to secure external grants for stabilisation and regrading of the cliff. The last of these was thankfully successful. Included within the Levelling Up grant is a specific project to invest £4.3 million to stabilise, regrade the East Cliff slip, and that also includes developing feasibility options for the future of the lift. In regard to the stabilising of the cliffs flanking the East Cliff lift, I am able to confirm that the preliminary studies have commenced in this respect, with a team of structural engineers assessing the current condition of the existing structures. Ecologists and geotechnical engineers will be assessing the current state of the flanking slopes. These works are to inform the design of the cliff stabilisation scheme, and our aim is to then undertake the stability works during the winter of 2024/5. In respect to the cliff lift itself, the practicality of any future remediation or alternative leisure offer will be subject to initial feasibility study that will commence later this year. This will be guided by the findings of the ongoing cliff stabilisation assessment and design. We do not yet have the funding identified to re-provide the lifts at this location. It is likely that we will explore a new design approach that is less dependent on the stability of the cliff and therefore less at risk of future damage. Any proposals will be subject to planning considerations and obtaining funding, but of course will be underpinned by the stability works that we are now able to undertake. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hadley. Also, under this agenda item, we have statements. There have been no statements received for this meeting. We also have petitions, and again, there have been no petitions received for this meeting. And I must say it's very cheering to have so many questions from the public. It really shows that people are taking notice of what we do. On to agenda item 7 on your sheets or on your computers. Review of the political balance of the council, the allocation of seats on the committees to each political group, and the appointment of councillors to committees and appointments on outside bodies. I'm going to call upon the leader, Councillor Slade, who will propose the recommendations, I believe, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's only been one meeting since we last did this report. Hopefully it won't be something we have to do at every meeting going forward. So the reason that this paper has come forward is that it is a requirement under the Local Government Act that seats on all council committees and a number of outside bodies are politically balanced. So when there is a change to the political balance between groups, we have to review the correct numbering. So my first job is to say welcome to Councillor Sarah Armstrong for your success at the election in East Cliff. You are very, Springbourne, don't forget the most important part, Springbourne. You are very welcome, and we look forward to seeing you on various committees going forwards. The paper is quite straightforward. There are a number of tables that are included, which are for information. Tables 1 to 5, table 1, 2 and 3 are just looking at the actual number of councillors and how we balance that out. When we change numbers in a particular way, sometimes the numbers don't quite add up to the number of seats on all of the committees. And so what, with the help of Democratic Services, has been done is some changes have been made with removing some people from one committee, adding others. We've actually reduced the number of seats on the Investigatory and Disciplinary Committee, which has never met, and I hope it never does, and increased the number of seats on the Corporate and Community Scrutiny Board by 2, so an increase in the number of overall seats by 1 in order to balance things out. Across the internal committees, this then balances in a political, the political balance, so there is no variance with the number of seats each political group should have and the number of seats that they do have. However, There are a number of outside bodies that also have political balance, and one of those bodies is the Lower Gardens Central Trust Board. If we were to be perfectly politically balanced, this would have, where are we, 2 Liberal Democrats, 1 Conservative, 1 Labour and 1 member of the Green Party on it. But there is currently a non-aligned member who is sitting on this group who has asked to remain on the group, and the Green Party have said that they have no particular desire to take up a seat on that board. In order to allow that to happen, because that means we are slightly politically imbalanced, it is a requirement that there is no dissent to this report. So if anybody disagrees with accepting this arrangement, then the Greens will have to accept their seat on the board, and Councillor Bartlett will be thrown off. So it is my request to you that in order to allow Councillor Bartlett to carry on making the case for the flowers, that it would be nice if we don't object. It's also just worth mentioning that when there are seats on committees, we don't have to specify the names of the people on those committees, but where we're non-aligned, as in the case of Councillor Edwards and Councillor Bartlett, we have to specify their names according to their committees. So the tables are fairly self-explanatory, although they're very long. That is really the only contentious issue, is whether we are content for Councillor Bartlett to retain his seat on the Lower Central Gardens Trust Board. So, yeah, thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Leader. I now call upon Councillor Earl, who I understand wishes to second the recommendations in the report.
Happy to second.
Councillors, does anybody wish to speak, or is this all perfectly acceptable? Very convoluted. A lot of work has gone into this, I can tell. But no, I don't see anybody. Oh, hello, Councillor Farquhar.
Thank you very much. As a fortunately re-elected councillor, I would just like to speak on behalf of those new councillors, is that this is quite a confusing time. I cast my mind back to 2019. What I would like to do is actually praise the leader and the administration, because there's been a few occasions when the political balance has been discussed. There has been less than optimal discussion between group leaders as regards who should be placed where and why. It's a very formulaic process, and Democratic Services handle it very well, but it does need a deft touch to ensure that everybody's happy. And I'm fully in support of Councillor Bartlett remaining on the Lower Gardens board, and appreciative of the Greens giving way on their seat.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. I think the statement "everybody's happy" is the first time we've heard that, perhaps, for a while. Any more comments? Yes, okay. Right, we can go for consensus on this. There is no dissent. Thank you very much, members. Agenda item 8, questions from councillors. We have one question from a councillor this evening. I won't go too deeply into the rules, but you can have a supplementary question on this, but the questions must be questions, not statements. I'm sure the questioner actually knows this. And it must bring clarity to the issue. And the time limit is 3 minutes. So with that in mind, Councillor Andrews, I understand you've a question to put to the Chairman of Audit and Governance Committee on inland homes. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The previous administration of this council entered into a £43.5 million contract with Inland Homes to construct 161 flats, a gym and some shops at Carter's Quay, Hamworthy in Poole in September 21. Inland have made little progress in the construction. Partly of the site stopped in February. There are reports that subcontractors have walked off site as they've not been paid. Inland shares were suspended from trading in April, and Inland has now delayed 3 times publishing the 2021-22 accounts. Even Inland are saying they will show a £90 million loss.
10 directors have resigned since last September. My questions are, 1, can the chairman advise if during the financial check were identified any financial concerns before the contract was signed? 2, apart from the initial £8.25 million paid in 2021, have any more monies been paid to Inland? 3, what steps are now being taken to protect our investment? Are there penalties in the contract for late delivery of the scheme that was due to complete in September 24? As we could be seeing a 12-month delay, assuming Inland can start rebuilding soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. I think we hand this to Councillor Beasley, who is the Chairman of Audit and Governance. Councillor Beasley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and I thank Councillor Andrews for his questions. Since the questions were received, there has been some discussion with officers as to whether these issues are all directly within the remit of audit and governance. Save as to the more general risk issues and the Council's risk register, which are a fundamental responsibility of the committee, I am, however, responding to the questions regardless of responsibility in order to give Council the current updated position. So, in the order that the questions were asked, Madam Chairman, to the first one, full Council agreed to purchase a turnkey development for the land and completed building at the meeting on the 14th of September 2021, and for reference it was agenda item 8. The report set out the details of the acquisition, including the risks and the due diligence undertaken. As the transaction was for a property acquisition, there was no requirement to carry out a formal procurement exercise, which may have included additional credit checks. The second question, the response is that Inland Partnerships Limited have been paid £6.75 million to date, in line with the Council's obligations under the contract for the independently certificated works that have taken place, in addition to the £8.25 million. And thirdly, Madam Chairman, legal advice is being taken to fully understand the Council's position. I have been advised that this is in addition to the ongoing discussions with Inland Homes regarding the best way to successfully deliver the scheme. Where appropriate, any changes to the programme will be reflected in variations to the contract terms. In terms of the Council's corporate risk register, the Audit and Governance Committee review this on a quarterly basis. Escalation from project risk registers to service risk registers to the corporate risk register can occur, but this tends to be for risks that the Council has as council-wide risks impacting on most council areas, not service-specific or project-specific. It is therefore not normal for the Audit and Governance Committee to routinely consider specific project or service risk registers, but it can call these in as required. Audit and Governance Committee's primary role is to consider the adequacy of the overall risk management arrangements and the adequacy of managing the large strategic council-wide risks within the corporate risk register. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beasley, for that very comprehensive answer. Councillor Andrews, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Madam Chairman. Does the Chairman agree with me that contracts like this that see a material delay and increased risk should be the subject of scrutiny by the ANG Committee, so that if there are any lessons to be learnt, they are considered by councillors?
Councillor Beasley, do you want to answer that or give a written answer later on?
I'm quite happy to have an attempt at answering Councillor Andrews' supplementary, certainly, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beasley. I'm sure you can.
So I think I should preface what I'm going to say by the advice I've received from the monitoring officer, because as I indicated at the beginning of my first response, not all of these issues are a matter for audit and governance, and we need to be careful that we don't widen the brief of audit and governance out of its initial task. So there are questions that might be better answered by others within the administration, but what I would say is that the advice comes actually from the Council's constitution. The purpose of our Audit and Governance Committee is to provide independent assurance to the adequacy of the risk management framework and the internal control environment. It provides independent review of the Council's governance, risk management and control frameworks, and oversees the financial reporting and annual governance processes. It oversees internal audit and external audit, helping to ensure efficient and effective assurance arrangements are in place. Factually, however, the specifics of the Council's contract with Inland Homes may be more for the relevant portfolio holder than for me as Chair of Audit and Governance. I'm only able to address the items that I've identified, but I have actually done my best to answer all of them. Some of those are about the financial checks and the steps taken to protect the Council's investment. And those are the ones which I think would probably be more relevant to the question in the supplementary. What I would add is that it's always within the remit of audit and governance to add items to its forward plan. And over the last 4 years, that's exactly what has happened, Madam Chairman. We increased the number of meetings, I think, to 10 in 1 year, but 8 in most, above the normal quarterly reporting, which carry the routine papers. And in doing that, we invited members of the committee, and indeed, on several occasions, all members of the council, to bring forward issues which they felt audit and governance should be looking at, should be reviewing, and should be examining in more detail. And certainly this is one such that at the appropriate time, once those further discussions have taken place that I referred to in my answer to question number 3, that the Audit and Governance Committee may very well decide to bring forward, as we have on other issues in the past. I can't predict whether that will be the case or not, but it's certainly something which I think Audit and Governance will wish to consider, and may well need a little bit of time to get the necessary information so that it can be fully discussed to the benefit of the Council. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beasley, and thank you, Councillor Andrews, for the questions. Right, moving on. Agenda item 9. This is notices of motion in accordance with our procedure rule 9. And this is on the cost of living crisis. Oh, I'm so sorry, Councillor. Yes, do.
Oh, there we go, cracking. So I'm sorry, I'm not sure if this is the right point to ask, but I didn't follow all of that because I'm very new to this and I don't know what an internal control environment is and all of that jazz, but it sounded interesting because it's a big sum of money. Am I allowed to ask John to clarify exactly what's gone on there, what he meant in his answer?
The answer is no, but I'm so sorry. It is that we don't discuss them once they've been put. Thank you, but thank you very much. And thank you for battling with the microphones. I must say to everybody, they are notorious, so you'll get the hang of them.
Madam Chairman, I am, however, very happy. I am very happy to
I think
explain
we've gone
after
that
the
far.
meeting.
We've gone far enough, John. Thank you.
After the meeting.
Yes. You can discuss it outside the meeting with Councillor Beasley. Thank you very much. Agenda item 9. I see no more hands raised in... Agenda item 9, back to the cost of living crisis, which is obviously on all our minds. Councillor Carr-Brown, I'm calling on you to move your motion. And Councillor, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is the first motion of the new Labour group and of this new council. A council that looks very different from the last and we hope will behave and function very differently. It's important, therefore, that we start by addressing the issue we hear so much on the doorstep and the thing that most worries our residents, the cost of living crisis. All indications suggest it's only going to get worse this year. Core inflation continues to climb and food prices are only rising a little slower than they were 12 months ago. Energy prices are still way above where they should be, and so thousands are facing a cold and hungry winter. And while so much of that is at a national policy level and beyond the control of the Council, there is still much the Council can do, and we all have a duty to do as much as we can to help our fellow residents. This motion seeks to maximise the new administration's commitment to doing just that. We hope we're pushing at an open door, but it's still necessary to push. Thousands of people voted Labour in the May elections because they believed in our manifesto, share our values and are desperate for change. Our values will drive everything we do in the next 4 years, And we're starting with a clear but constructive challenge to the new administration to show us in concrete ways how they are different from the last one. And this really matters. Up to March this year, Trussell Trust food banks across BCP saw a 25% increase in their distribution totals. That's an extra 3,500 food parcels to people in need. A 25% increase that is likely to only get worse. Another food bank, Hope for Food, stated just last month that the number of families referred to them for help with weekly food parcels is steadily rising, and for the first time ever has reached 170 in 1 week. And they think they're only reaching half the people who need their help. It's clear that the cost of living crisis is having a significant impact on local people, from children and the vulnerable to mortgage holders, renters and small business owners. It touches most of us in some way, but for thousands in BCP, it's devastating. We understand the budget constraints the Conservatives have left us with and their skewed priorities of vanity projects over real investment in our children's futures and the care of our elderly and vulnerable. But the Council has a central role via its community engagement function, both through its own staff and through the contracts it awards to charities and voluntary groups, to ensure that every resident can access the maximum help available quickly and easily in their time of need. This community engagement is a vital support in a time of crisis, and as we tighten our belts, we must not stop that outreach. Our residents rely on these services to get by in difficult times, and we mustn't let them down. I know many, and I hope most, councillors here will support this motion, as this is the kind of difference we can and need to make to those who otherwise will struggle more than they might this winter. We all know they'll struggle more than they should, and so we must do as much as we can to protect those for whom these times are the hardest.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Carr-Brown. Before we find the seconder, the Chief Executive wishes to make a
Thank you, Chairman. Just to explain the musical background to Councillor Carr-Brown's introduction to her motion, which was that when we get a proposed amendment, we send the amendments out by email to all councillors at the point where the amendment's about to be announced. So 76, or actually probably about 71 computers all chimed. If you could be in the council meetings with your speakers off, that would be really, really helpful. But that's what the musical accompaniment was and we'll probably discuss those amendments now, I think. But I just wanted to explain to new members that you will find the wording sent out, so you don't just have to listen, you can also read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. To be honest, I didn't hear any music at all, so sitting up here, we're shielded. Councillor Carr-Brown, you have a seconder for your motion. Thank you. Would you care to speak, Councillor Aikenhead?
I wish to second the motion, but I would like to reserve my right to speak to later in the debate.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, can we, looking for debate? Councillor Earle, I think you indicated. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm really pleased to see a motion proposed on this topic, as since taking over control of the council, it's been front and centre really of everything we do, whether that's the pressure on services and our staff or on our communities who are really feeling the effects of the cost of living crisis. Over the last 6 weeks, I've been really grateful to meet with council officers, partners, charities, organisations and communities and see some of the incredible work that people are doing to try and tackle the pressures that people are facing in our communities. I've been completely blown away, I would say, and would like to thank those who give up their time and energy to help others. And although it's amazing to see the selflessness and the sacrifice, I can't help but feel enraged that the government has pushed us all into a position of uncertainty where many need to rely on charity just to get by rather than tackling the root causes of poverty and inequality. The administration has inherited an incredibly difficult financial position from the previous administration with an in-year shortfall. However, we're getting ahead on this next year's budget, so it reflects the priorities of the Three Towns Alliance, which of course includes improving support for residents with the cost of living and creating a more equitable future for the residents of BCP. I'm proposing an amendment to that effect, as we didn't want to abandon this motion, as we very much agree with its aim. Democratic Services have circulated it already, so please do have a look. It recognises the current financial position of the Council and gives a commitment from our administration to work closely with officers and our partners at Citizens Advice, Dorset Community Foundation, Ridgewater, Fire Services, schools, and make sure that the Household Support Fund allocation that we currently have reaches those who are close or already in crisis. It also asks that we will consider the impacts of the cost of living in our own communities and consider how we can help and support and signpost to available assistance, whether that's provided by the council or by the community. And I've been lucky enough to be involved with the Access to Food partnership since it started, and I've seen some of the incredible work that came out of it around sort of that partnership working and making sure that all organisations support each other. And as a council, really, you know, what we need to be doing is facilitating and enabling those valuable organisations to work together for the good of our residents. So thank you for this motion, and I hope you will consider accepting the amendment and our promise to take this forward properly in the next budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Earle. I must say that I made a mistake there. I didn't realise that you were putting an amendment because I hadn't checked it on my screen. But since you have put the amendment, I must ask you to read the whole amendment so that not only councillors but the members of the public can see where your amendment comes. Thank you.
That BCP Council is concerned at the continuing pressures of the cost of living crisis on so many in our communities. This Council, this is what I'm adding, A, calls on Cabinet to work closely with partners who are already undertaking incredible work to support our communities across BCP to ensure that available funding in the current year, such as the Household Support Fund 4, targets those most in need in line with guidance for the funding. B, calls on Cabinet, and then back to the original motion, to set out, then deletes, as soon as possible as part of any revised budget proposals, then includes in its next budget what action it is planning to take, deletes this year, includes specifically to ensure that levels of financial support are sufficient to promote community engagement, to assist the staff, charities and voluntary groups who are supporting families and the vulnerable. And it inserts, and C, resolves to help, and includes ensure that all BCP residents can easily access the support they need, and inserts whether that is through our own services provided by our partners and by the voluntary sector, or help and support in the community, and includes during this time of economic hardship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Earle. I know that was quite difficult because I can see it on my screen now. Thank you very much. Councillor Earle, do you have a seconder for that amendment?
I'd like to second, please. Shall I speak now? Or?
Yes, very welcome to speak now, Councillor Cox, on the amendment.
On the amendment. Therefore, what I would also like to do is to thank Councillor Carr-Brown for this motion, which is much needed. And has already been noted in what you've said so far, the cost of living problems in BCP and the whole country are severe, and unfortunately they will only get worse, as we've seen tonight that the mortgage rates are hitting the highest that they've been for the last 15 years, to say nothing about what private rents are doing at the same time. This council will do everything it can to help the people through this difficult time. Sadly, the council's finances are left by the previous administration are in a perilous state. The last administration drained the resources of the council of £60 million of reserves over the last 2 years, including £30 million in the current year, the year we're in at the moment, as well as leaving £10 million of unidentified savings in this year. To cap it all, after removing the mythical savings that had been put forward, we're now faced with a £44 million medium-term financial plan funding gap for next year. And if we don't solve that urgently, then we won't have a council there to support the people of this area. There will be very difficult decisions ahead, but one thing we must do is to protect those most vulnerable in our community, and that's my priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Now, I would like to ask Councillor Carr-Brown and her seconder, Councillor Aikenhead, initially, would you accept that amendment to your initial motion?
Yes, we do accept that amendment. We are disappointed at the removal of the commitment to this year, but we welcome the strength of the commitment for the next budget round.
Councillor Aikenhead.
I'm also happy for it to be accepted.
Right, so do we debate this?
No, the council just has to agree that that gets wrapped in. So is everybody happy with that?
Councillors or members, are we happy that that amendment from Councillor Earl, seconded by Councillor Cox, is wrapped around the original motion from Councillor Carr-Brown and Councillor Aikenhead? Sorry, I'm stumbling. Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, I'm just curious, and maybe I'm just not paying. Oh, have I got to stand up? I'll stand up. All right, I'll stand up. I'm just curious. I might have missed it. But so it sounds like this amendment says you haven't got to do anything this year, you do it in the next budget. Is there a reason it can't be done this year that I missed when, I forget the gentleman's name was talking just now? Does what I say make sense? So it sounds like this motion, is it right that this removes the commitment to do... stand up.
Yes,
I don't like
you.
this formalness. So... the original motion says, please do this year. Amended, it says, do it at the next budget, yeah? So, did I miss what the explanation was why this couldn't be done this year, or was I not paying attention?
Yes, thank you. I think both councillors did explain that. I'm sorry, I haven't now got it on my screen again, so I can't help you there. Chief Executive, can you help me on that?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to explain, I think in terms of the procedure, the options are if somebody moves an amendment and the proposer and seconder both accept it, then we put that to the council. If the council approves that, then without debate, that becomes a substantive motion. When we debate the substantive motion, then you can raise points like that within that debate. So I think in terms of technicality at the moment, we're seeing whether the council, so we have now the proposer and seconder have said, yes, we're happy to agree that amendment. Does the council agree that by majority? If it does, then that becomes a substantive. We then open that for debate. And that's the point, I think, to ask that question, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. I hope we all grasped that. It is, I must say that amendments and motions are very, very difficult to grasp, even when you've done it quite a while. So, members, as I said before, are we content that we add Councillor Earl's words and meanings to the original Carr-Brown and Aikenhead motion? Thank you. I thought he was agreeing. Sorry, Councillor Bartlett, were you agreeing or speaking?
I'd like to speak, please, Chair.
Sorry, Chairman, I think that's the point. At the moment, this is being put as a, if the proposer and seconder have agreed it, does the council agree it? It's not for debating that amendment at this point. If we have that agreement across the chamber. Otherwise, we are now opening a debate about the amendment.
Chair, that's the point I wanted to raise, because you need to talk to the amendment before you can decide whether that amendment is acceptable. It's pointless agreeing it and then discussing it after it's already been agreed. And I agree that there's a very valid question that's come from Councillor Salmon. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the monitoring officer to explain what's going on here.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. So, as the proposer and the seconder of the original motion have accepted this amendment to be incorporated, in other words, they have agreed to amend their original motion to include the proposed amendment. It's provided for in Rule 1412 of the Procedure Rules. Then it's just for the Council to indicate whether or not they're prepared to take that acceptance on without debate. And the amended motion becomes the substantive, and that is debated in full by the Council. I can read the rule out if that might help.
I think it
Shall
would be helpful.
I read the rule out?
Yes,
okay.
please.
A councillor and in this case it's Councillor Carr-Brown, may alter a motion or amendment of which they have given notice, and may also, with the consent of the seconder, that's Councillor Aikenhead, alter a motion or amendment which they have moved. In both cases, the consent of the Council is required. There should be no discussion on whether consent should or should not be given. Thank you.
Right, members, can we go back to the start of this? Members, do you accept the changes on the Carr-Brown-Aikenhead motion? Agreed. Thank you. So now, as I understand it, and I'm getting confused up here, that is now the substantive motion, which I believe, can we debate that?
So it's open for debate, yes.
Now we can debate it, so I think we'll probably look over there to see who's putting their hand up first. Which one's the...
Sorry, is it now I can ask my question, or do we need to do other amendment bits first?
Well, it's actually time for debate. So yes,
cracking.
Questions, debates, whichever you want to do.
So yeah, question first, yeah? Oh yeah, stand up, right. So I guess my question's about the timescale stuff, because it sounds like we are brassic, you know, and I think we all get that. And so I did quite like in the original motion, like this year, ASAP, like if you're absolutely flat broke skint, you don't go, "Gore, I'm flat broke skint, I'm going to work really hard on sorting my finances out and take a year to do it." You do it that day. You look at your spending and whatnot. I don't know, I'd like to hear if it's possible to stick to the year thing. That's the only bit I didn't like. I don't follow all the stuff about how we amend it and all of that. But it would be nice if we could get something sooner rather than later on all of this stuff. Sue's stuff's urgent, which she spoke about as well. We've got to be fast. We've got to be moving at pace. I mean, God, I've been in this role 2 months, and we are slow getting stuff done, you know? I know it's the process, but we've got to change that, you know? We have got to change that. Right, that's my 2 pence.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Rigby was next, I think.
But I hope he's not moving his amendment.
But he could.
Oh, could he?
Yes, because we're on the substantive motion, yes.
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I might give way for a second because I was going to raise another amendment, but if anyone wants to continue that debate, I'll give way and wait for a moment.
Councillor Bartlett, I see your hand.
Thank you. I think the issue is that the problems are here and now today, and we don't know what's going to happen to the economic situation in a year's time as we work up our budget to next February. And that, to me, is the issue. You know, hopefully the government will implement changes that will ease the situation as we approach next year. But the problem is now today, and I think that's the issue. And we have to ask ourselves, is there anything possible we can do now? And I suspect there is very little from what Councillor Cox has said. There's very little room to manoeuvre. But I don't think that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't be asking the questions and looking at the priorities that we've currently got and look at some of the measures that we've discussed actually prior to this budget in terms of what savings could be produced in the current year that could be redirected maybe to some of these other areas. And I'm thinking in particular some of the support measures that were cut from our third sector organisations, which were, I think, sort of had their money reduced significantly this year. So it's just a suggestion, but I feel a bit uncomfortable. Whilst the intent is clear in the answers we've been given, I think the timing of it is probably not quite right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Slade, I think you were putting your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Salmon, it's a right pain, but you'll get used to the standing up, sitting down thing. Just put your pedometer in your pocket and it counts towards steps, I'm reliably informed. I completely understand your frustration. I absolutely do. And I know that when we first came into office, we had hoped to be in a position to do an in-year emergency budget. It soon became very clear that simply wasn't going to be possible, and that the problems that would cause to officers who are still trying to come to terms with the budget situation they're in would have actually caused so much trouble we probably wouldn't have achieved an awful lot. However, I can assure you that work is already starting on the new budget, which will be out to public consultation before Christmas, well before Christmas. That is not that many months away. I hate to tell you, Christmas will be here before we know it. What I do want to reassure Councillor Bartlett is that it isn't in this year that the Community Action Network have had their budget cut. It is actually in next year. Their budget for this year is secure. They are able to continue their work. The Citizens' Advice are doing incredible work. They have seen a massive increase in the number of people going to them, and their funding is securely supporting those people. But I do just want to touch on a couple of things that this council has done and continues to do. Back in 2019, you'll be aware that we hosted the Hidden Hunger conference, at which we used money from the Brexit fund, knowing that the cost of living crisis was coming for another reason. We didn't predict COVID or this cost of living crisis, but we knew that there was something coming, and we used it to be able to launch our Access to Food partnership, which was expanded on by the following administration and is now really secure and doing incredible work. We've also had for some time the LEAP partnership, which is about trying to get people's homes warm and secure, and that work again was expanded in the last couple of years after COVID, when other problems started to develop, and I know our comms team have done a great job in trying to get that out, and actually our role is making sure people understand what's available. But what we are committed to do when we first sat down as an alliance, but we hadn't yet announced, and so Councillor Carr-Brown's motion has preceded this. She is aware that this is coming, is that we had already agreed to give somebody the responsibility for poverty and rough sleeping, and to actually try to work really closely with those people who are affected by that, so that they can really understand what it is that they need from us, and to use their own experience and their relationships to drive it straight into Cabinet with the needs of the people who most need our help. And I am very pleased to announce that Councillor McCormack has accepted the opportunity to take up that position, and will be starting that work in a few weeks' time. We weren't going to talk about it until August, but given that this has come forward, it seems appropriate to raise it now. So there is something happening. The Household Support Fund 4 grant, we are assured, is being targeted where it is most needed. And I'm sure that with Simon driving us, he will make sure that the budget for the upcoming year will be focused on the people that most need it. And as much as I would love to do something more quickly, that could just cause actually counterproductive issues.
Thank you, Leader. I now have Councillor Trent, who indicated, I believe. Thank you, Councillor Trent.
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand the issue about the overall budget. I think the challenge ahead is scary, to say the least. I think that's possibly the understatement of the year, but I think it's going to be really awful. But in the original motion, there is reference to what I think is an important aspect in all of this, and that is that we have to make sure that we communicate with people and we get the message across so that the right people are getting the right help. And I think one other thing that we can do is that there are bits within what this council does or has an influence on that is ring-fenced. For example, our landlord responsibility, the housing revenue account, is ring-fenced. But I think it would be useful if we can sort of be asking them, are they doing everything they can within their remit to help those that are most in need? Because I do think that targeting help is the most important thing here, and that we need to get through to the right people, and also enable the right people to get through to us, because I think I've bored people to death about the digital divide, but there are a lot of people that can't relate to us in the normal way that we're used to communicating. So I do think we need to look at that side of it, and we also need to make sure that we are getting the help where it's needed, and that all of the arms that are influenced by this council can also be wary that they do what they can do, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aikenhead, I think you reserved your right, so you wish to speak now.
Yes, and I would like to reassure all the people who have been wondering why we accepted the amendment that we do still want something to be done now. We would love something to be done right now. Looking through BCP Council's own statistics, we have 51.7% of households have one of the 5 types of deprivation. That's more than half. 8,614 children in absolute low-income families in BCP. 11.4% of households estimated to have fuel poverty. So this is our own BCP statistics. So we know how important this is. We know that the action is needed now, but in the Labour group, we debated this, and we recognised that the council is in a dire financial situation. And yes, we're angry about that. We're angry because this council has been left in a situation where we can't do the things that we need to do because money was wasted. But we're also angry because this council doesn't have the money it should, because it had, over the last, I don't know how many years, the national government has not been giving councils the money that they need to do the job, to take on all the responsibilities, like social care, such a huge part of our budget. We are so restricted in what we can do. And recognising all these things, we felt that the best way for us to try and persuade the administration to act on this now, to do something on this now, was not for us to fight them and try to make political points, but to show people that we can work together for the good of local people. And that is what the priority is here.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cooper, I think you were indicating.
I just agree with most things that have been said, really. But I just wanted to say we're at a position now, aren't we, where we kind of know where we want to go. We know where we are. And I think the crucial thing we need to do now, and by fleet of foot, I'm with Joe on this, because we are very slow. You know, we're like an oil tanker. That's how councils move. And we really need to turn this ship around, for want of a much better metaphor. But by fleet of foot, we need to identify all the faults in our system, the way that we cannot or can't communicate with each other. And I'll give a grassroots example. In my first few days as a councillor, I'm on Turling Moor, knocking on doors, I'm in the food bank, I'm doing all this kind of stuff, and I find out there's 5 or 6 different partners, 5 or 6 different agencies, all with different targets, all trying to work with the same community. So like a bit of a crochet hook. Well, Peter's not going to do all this, but maybe we can pull people together to come to some agreed targets, and maybe be a bit more draconian and say, well, actually, we do want to address inequality, we do want to address poverty, but we need to work together to do that. So maybe I'm suggesting that by fleet of foot we have a working party which looks at all, and if you look at this little sentence here, which is a good one, the term whether, I mean, that's debatable. Whether that is through our own services, so which services, we need to identify those. Services provided by our partners, we need to identify those, who they are, what services do they provide, where do they get the money from, which voluntary sector partners are we with that are up for this, and in the community, how can we get the community engaged themselves in addressing inequality and poverty in their own communities. I can't stress that we need to move by fleet of foot, and I feel quite pleasant that everybody seems to be in accordance that we need to address poverty and the cost of living crisis caused by austerity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filer, you indicated.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And the Councillor's comments just now lead very well into what I want to say. Earlier this week, I was really privileged to attend the Poverty Truth Commission end of year, which Councillor Felicity Rice is really instrumental in organising. She's one of the organisers and she's very passionate about it. It was a really large meeting. It was There were quite a few councillors there. It was cross-party, and it does exactly what's suggested. It is not practical. It's not on the financial side which the council can help with, but they're working closely with people who themselves have experienced poverty, and they're part of the process, so that you've got people from the different agencies, the ones you referred to, working together with people who themselves have experienced poverty, and it was absolutely inspiring. And I'd like to hope that that's the way. I had no idea that this took place, and I guess there's an awful lot of us who don't know about it. We all ought to be involved in it. It was an inspirational meeting. Some of the people who themselves who addressed the meeting have themselves lived in dire circumstances for many years and were so passionate and so articulate. It was really amazing. So all praise to Councillor Rice and everybody else involved with that. And I do think, I'm not absolutely sure, she'll correct me if it's wrong, that this is, if it's not actually sponsored by BCP, it's certainly a BCP initiative. People were there from all around, not just from, it was situated in a hall in Bournemouth, but I believe it came from the whole area, though I stand to be corrected if that's not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Feiler. Is there any more debate? Oh, hang on. Councillor Rice, and yes, Councillor Rice, do remain seated if it's more comfortable for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, no, it was BCP Council was one of 40 partners that were involved with the Poverty Truth Commission. So it is very much a whole BCP-wide community initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Earle.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just going to respond to Councillor Cooper and his suggestion at a working party, which I think would be brilliant. I think, you know, where we've got a cabinet who's really committed to this, we're going to have a champion leading on this from the administration to sort of help with the volume of work. But actually, I think that would be a really important part of scrutiny as a function to follow that work and make sure that it's able to feed in. So I think that's a really good idea, and I would suggest take it to your scrutiny committees and hopefully get it in place. Thanks.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm looking in that direction. I'm not ignoring you, Councillor Broadhead. Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I thought it was worth actually having a bit of a look back. We've got a lot of new councillors here because whilst I absolutely accept, and I think we can all agree, the cost of living crisis not only is not over by any stretch, but has a tendency and the propensity to potentially get worse as well. So of course we need to be looking forward about all of the continuing work that we will have to do, and I'm really supportive of having a cross-party working group to continue to look at that, and more than happy to be part of it. But I think it is worth mentioning to councillors that are new, and actually people watching that are struggling, the number of council initiatives that are already underway, and all the support that officers and a lot of the partner agencies that we are working with have at their disposal. We got ahead of this last year. In July 2022, we actually had a cost of living crisis where we brought together over 100 frontline workers to look at all of the different ways that we could work through the inflationary environment, the cost of living pressures. That culminated in a paper, and it's really worth looking at, which was a cabinet paper, and it came to council last October, which went through all of the different challenges we were facing and a number of the different initiatives that we had. I thought it was worth pointing out a few of them. We've got a BCP Access to Food partnership. That's a partnership of over 200 individuals, 90 organisations, all of whom sign up to the Access to Food Partnership Charter. That got some lottery funding last year and does a number of things to make sure that people can access food whilst in crisis, equip families with skills, as well as bringing communities together to work together as well. We also in BCP Council have a community food coordinator, and in total, as part of that initiative alone, have about 1,200 frontline staff who are trained in food resilience and how to access community food offers and more, and we work really closely with schools on that as well. Following on from the work of Together We Can in the COVID times, we set up a steering group which then oversaw the Winter Resilience Response Network, which has continued to look at this as well. And that has been looking at things like the Household Support Fund number 1, which ran last year, Household Support Road number 2, which ran from April to the end of September, as well as the Household Support Fund number 3. We have Safe and Well visits, which are a free service, which we work with Dorset and Wilts Fire and Rescue Service to help people feel safe in their homes. We've got something called the Bournemouth Christchurch Pool Affordable Warmth Partnership, which is a multi-agency team which helps deliver energy, poverty and home assurance. We've got the Homeless Reductionship Partnership. We've obviously, as the leader has said, worked very closely and have continued to fund this year the Citizens Advice work. And in addition, we've got something called a Cost of Living Working Group, which I think is still active, which works with a number of other partners around housing, such as the Sovereign Housing Group, Abri, Housing 21 and Sanborn, alongside our new BCP homes. There is a tremendous amount more to do. We've got other things such as warm welcome places. We could go on forever, but I fully accept that we need to do more. I'm quite content and keen to work with others to see what more we can do in the future, but it is worth knowing that if people are in trouble, look at this paper. There is an awful lot of ways which council's helping and which partner agencies are helping as well, so that we can point them in the right direction to get the help they need. Thank you.
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you. I'm going to make an amendment, but before that, I'm really glad Councillor Broadhead's just brought that up, because that was something I wanted to raise as well. And I think it's really important, this signposting that we're talking about, it needs to be somewhere central that people can access really easily. And this is something we can do, which is cheap and easy to put in place, and people can go there and see what help is available, and not just online, but in libraries, things like that. When we did the Together We Can and we were going out, I remember walking around giving posters to local supermarkets and getting them on community notice boards and having that information available, because we're talking about protecting the most vulnerable in our society, and it's getting beyond that now with the cost of living crisis. You know, you used to be able to go into the Aldi and come out with your week's shopping and a chainsaw for 30 quid. Now you can't even walk past it without spending 30 quid. You know, it's difficult for everyone, and it's getting worse, and it's only going to get worse as we get to schools going back. Parents are going to be looking for new uniforms for their kids. As we get into winter, the cost of energy is not really going down to make much of a difference, especially with the discounts which are not going to be there anymore. So we're talking about a much broader part of society than what we were 2 years ago. So this information needs to be available for everyone, and there needs to be no shame in looking for it and needing out and reaching out for that help. And not just agencies that we're working with, there's other people in their communities who are doing food drops. There's people like B Mission who are going out and doing food drops for homeless or people threatened with homeless. There's the social canteen in Boscombe where you can go and take your family and get a meal for a few quid donation or free if you need it. You know, there's loads and loads of things happening, and it's pointing people in this direction. But my amendment has got nothing to do with that. So I just wanted to try and cram it in this 3 minutes. So the amendment that I want to do, it's about, and we touched on this before as well, about how funding's been stripped away from councils, and it's been stripped away from not just us, from everyone over the last 10, 12 years throughout austerity. And not only has the funding been stripped away, what councils have had to provide, what local authorities have had to provide has increased as well. So it's getting ridiculous, and this is where we find ourselves with these black holes in our finances. So we need to make this appeal. We need to make an appeal to central government to say, look, we need this funding back. And this isn't a bailout. This isn't asking for a bailout. This is saying you've taken this away and people in our communities are suffering. We need to be able to support them. So the amendment, and I'll read it in full, and it's a lot easier to read in full than the one Councillor Earle read before. So I would like to add as D to the now substantive. Furthermore, this council requests that the leader or relevant portfolio holder makes formal representation to the Secretary of State for levelling up housing and communities, that funding to local authorities be increased so that local authorities can provide support to residents during the cost of living crisis. It's as simple as that, and I hope you'll just agree to accept that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Did I hear that you have a seconder, and if so, who is it? Thank you. Now, do we debate this one? Do we accept?
I thought it was asked Councillor Carr-Brown whether she accepts.
Yes. Councillor Carr-Brown and Councillor Aikenhead, would you accept the amendment as written out and as read by Councillor Rigby, which is basically an addition onto your original motion and onto the amendment?
Yes, we accept that as point D on the original motion.
Thank you.
I can confirm that I accept as well.
Thank you. Now, members, can we have consensus on that, accepting that? Councillor Rigby's amendment goes on to the motion proposed by Councillor Carr-Brown initially and amended by Councillor Earl. So we now have consensus, hopefully, on all of those pieces of the original amendment. Councillors, are we agreed on that? Right.
So that's the substantive motion.
Right, we're back now to having a substantive motion, which I'm not going to ask everybody to read out, and I'm not reading it out myself either. But I hope we've all been following. But so yes, that was a very good debate. Any further debate?
No.
You could. No, you can't.
So if councillors have spoken on the amendment, they can speak on the substantive motion. We haven't actually debated the amendments, though, because they've all been put and accepted. So no, you're quite right. Thinking about it, I think all the amendments were put and accepted. Therefore, it's only if any councillors that haven't input so far would wish to debate. So, for example, Councillor Hadley.
So Councillor Hadley will be speaking on the substantive motion, which also includes both amendments. Thank you, Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I very much welcome the implications and the intention of all parties in trying to do our best here, but particularly on the item D, as raised by Councillor Rigby. I am concerned. Austerity was a deliberate choice, and it put more wealth in the hands of the rich at the expense of those least advantaged in our society. During COVID, there are some very inappropriate and very expensive contracts let that put a lot of money into the hands of the rich. And during the energy crisis, rather than putting pressure on the energy companies to constrain their enthusiasm to increase the costs, there were short-term subsidies for people that went straight back into the pockets of the energy companies. So I would be very keen that the pressure to government is to actually to look not just at giving money to councils, but to the root cause of some of these issues that have impoverished this nation hugely and given us as a council a really hard opportunity. So I would be really keen to see that as part of the response that goes to government. I don't think it needs to be an amendment to the amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any more comment or debate on the now substantive motion? Because if not, I'm going to ask Councillor Carr-Brown, who initiated this whole motion, to wind up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to this chamber and for everyone who's contributed to this very useful and full debate that I think shows the commitment of this council to helping our residents. We are disappointed that this motion no longer applies to this year. There's no doubt about it. However, we do understand the budget constraints that exist. We wish it weren't so and that this could have been done now, but we are where we are. Our ability to help has been limited by financial constraints not of this administration's making, but there are always choices and priorities, and we had hoped that a greater commitment to showing those priorities now rather than next year could have been made here tonight. Because despite what Councillor Broadhead said in outlining the services, when I spoke to a local food bank just last week, they told me about a recent phone call they'd had from a young mum who was crying down the line because she had nothing in the cupboards. Those were her words, "I've got nothing in the cupboards." She had an 8-month-old with her and a 2-year-old. And so they sent over an emergency food parcel, even though people are supposed to be referred to them. Of course you would. What else would you do? This lady had not known where to turn. She should have been able to find that help easily, and so clearly she needed that help right now. These are the services we're talking about here. This is the difference this council can make to people's lives with the political will to do it. We need BCP's community engagement services strengthened so they can really function as a one-stop shop for residents' needs and concerns, and people need to know where to find them. So we're disappointed it doesn't keep this year in the motion, But we do welcome that this motion still keeps a strong commitment from the administration to outline the kind of action they will take in the next budget. And we will hold them to that commitment. We will watch and see how the next budget develops and hope the issues we've raised today and the debate that we've had this evening will be kept at the front of their minds as they do this work. We want this administration to be very different from the last, and how this has progressed will demonstrate that difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for your winding up. Now, councillors, although I feel there is consensus, I'm going to ask for a show of hands to make sure. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's unanimous. That does show the mood of the council. Thank you very much. Right, after all that amendment and counter-amendment, thank you very much for stretching my amendment knowledge here. Agenda item 10, urgent decisions taken by the Chief Executive in accordance with the Constitution. I will ask the Chief Executive to advise members.
Thank you, Chairman. Taken no urgent decisions since the last council meeting.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Now, it's now 8:45, and I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you, members, very much for